Okay, let me talk about buy versus rent. I think what I'm gonna give is probably the most quantitative analysis in the entire internet. So let's jump right in. So let's just look at the expense of rent first. The rent is very straightforward. This is based on Mid Tennessee. Rent 2,300. The rental insurance $10 per month. Buying a house, current average Nashville is 440K. And then the mortgage 3,000. And then the common wisdom of maintenance is 1% of the price of the house. Property tax 0.58%. Mortgage insurance 250. House insurance 300, and closing costs is 6% of the house, which is 3% on buy side and sell side. So there's multiplied by 2. Renting net profit is pretty much the equity you build by cost of buying minus rent, and then you can put the difference into stock with 8% or 10% return. Now it's just a very like for this hypothetical is 8% just to make it give a little bit more edge for buying. And then the down payment, because if you are renting, you don't need to. You can just use a down payment somewhere else, namely stock with 8% return, which is $140 per month. So it's like the down payment 5% of down payment of 440 and multiplied by 0.8 and divided by 12 months. That's how much. And then the profit is like the equity you build on mortgage, and then the house appreciation, and then minus the homeowner expenses. So let's see the buy side since it's more complicated. As you can see, the first few years of buying, you're mostly paying interest, percentage wise, like you're paying like 80% are all going to interest. Like less than 20% is going to the principal. So you're building up for every month. You're building up equity roughly $400 a month. Appreciation 3% of the entire house price. That's roughly $1,100 per month. So the math is very simple. 440 multiplied by 0.03 divided by 12. And the maintenance 1% of the entire house price divided by 12. Property tax, ignore this. Property tax 0.5 0.58. Yeah, 0.58. Great state of Tennessee. The mortgage insurance and then house insurance. Closing costs, of course, the longer you stay, this is just pretty much even out over five years. So net negative 280 per month. So you're losing money if you do 5 years. Of course, as you taking longer, this number will go down. The closing costs will go down because it's longer. The average every month you pay less. Equity will go up because as the year goes by, the more percentage go to equity, and then that will go into the favor. That's why you have a break-even number of years. But if you stay for longer than certain year, you'll break even. So let's just compare the first year net profit negative 280. We'll talk about this. We have opportunity cost of down payment 140 per month, and then you put the difference of the cost of house ownership minus the rent, you get $700 as of now. So the first year you net 840 per month on renting than buying the current market. So how about long run? I wrote a program that calculate from the beginning to 30 years. So the orange line is a total the net cost of buying. The blue line is the net cost of renting. So as you can imagine, if you keep renting, you essentially just having an additional opportunity cost. You just invest down payment, and then you invest the difference over the time, and then but you don't have appreciation of the you do not have the appreciation of the house. So over time, you buying will win out, but at the current time, it will break even at 11 years for 440K of a house, 5% down, and 230 rent. You will break even 11, meaning if you move out of the house, selling the house before 11 years. Oh, this is assume a 3% appreciation, or then you will lose money. If you stay longer than 11 years, you will break even. You're better off buying the house. So here's a basic parameter I was talking about. Housing price 440K, 5% down, 6. Mortgage rate 6%, 30-year term, 0.58. Property tax maintenance 1%, house appreciation 3%, rent 2,300, rent increase 3%, household income. This is for tax bracket. It doesn't do anything, most likely because your property tax wouldn't exceed the standard deduction. That's just for the tax purposes. Your property tax and the interest. The first few years you might have this benefit, but later on you wouldn't. It really depends on your income and then the house property price. Anyway, and then your investment is 10%, just to make it fair, because currently I would imagine we'll see a booming on the stock market. Let's do some sensitivity tests based on the base parameter. So sensitivity test is pretty much keep everything else the same, just moving one variable. As this one is a mortgage rate. As you can see, it's extremely sensitive on mortgage rate. X-axis is a mortgage rate. Y-axis is a break-even number of years. So as the mortgage rate go up, the number of year break-even is going through the roof. So for me, if everything stays the same, I think 5 years break-even is a sweet spot. So it's roughly here. That means if everything stays the same, the house price stays the same. If the mortgage rate down to 4.2%, I will consider buying. Unfortunately, now we are here at 6%, 6.5 even, roughly here, at least as of now, 2025. It wouldn't make any financial sense, like logical sense, to buy a house right now. You will lose. You would need to stay in your house for like over 2 decades to break even. Here's the reference. Just this number, like house price and rent, is based on Zillow. And let's do a sensitivity test. Everything the same, stay the same. Keep the house change the house price. So let's say for some reason the mortgage stay the same. The Fed chair is very stubborn. Nobody will be able to afford it. First of all, that's why there's so little transaction compared to the last few years, based on the analysis I mentioned, because it's not a fair value. So we need to see the house price go down to 440, down to 360K to make it make sense. The break-even year will be 5 years. So in other words, it will drop 18%. We need the price to drop 18% if the mortgage rate stay the same. And for down payment, interestingly enough, your money is better off everywhere. If you, because under 20%, you still need mortgage insurance, which is like a $260 for 440 per month. you're better off just put the money somewhere else. You just the money your money have better return on the stock market compared to the house. Another sensitivity is inflation. So pretty much like the inflation, if the inflation goes up, then the house appreciation. I would assume a house appreciation, rent appreciation will go along with inflation. So just to write it, rent inflation, like house inflation increase is like roughly inflation. So my basic assumption is 3%, which is here. It doesn't make sense for you to buy a house here because you will break even in roughly 10 years. But if you assume the inflation is 5%, then the current market is actually a sensible market, at least in Tennessee area. We'll discuss it later on that in more depth. For 20% down versus 5% down, over 20% you do not need to pay the mortgage insurance. So that's why everybody like thinking maybe you should pay 20% to just avoid the mortgage insurance. At least emotionally I was thinking the same way, but I did the math. Surprisingly enough, you're better off not to do that. You're better off paying the mortgage insurance. By the orange line is a number of years break even. So the higher, of course, the worse. The lower the better. The red line is 5% down. This is over the mortgage rate. So you are off by a lot. So mortgage rate, if you pay 20% down on the current market, you will never break even. So because the 20% money, like around $100,000, you better off put in the stock market, earning $8,000 per year, which is 8%, roughly 10%. It's like $10,000 per year. You better off doing that. Then the difference you can almost paying half of the rent. Put it bluntly. So based on this, surprisingly enough, I did a calculation. At least based on the insurance, you almost always make sense to pay as little as possible as a down payment because the money works better somewhere else, like stock market. Because I cannot imagine stock market in long run perform worse than house. As long as you do any sensible decision, just put an S&P 500 or something. Here's a two-dimensional sensitivity test. Everything stays the same. Sorry, this is a home price. The y-axis, x-axis is a mortgage. So as I mentioned, 5 years is a sweet spot for me. Roughly here. Here is where we are, 7.5, 6.5 as 440. This you will break even in like 10 years. I wanted either the market price goes down or the interest the mortgage rate go down. If you are interested for future reference, just maybe take a screenshot. This is probably a good guidance for you to see when is a good time to buy a house or at least a fair market. Don't forget, there's always a momentum in the sense that people sell things almost always oversold, meaning there will be a buyer's market instead of neutral market. We're slowly tilting towards buyer's market, which is great. So my prediction, my personal opinion, current market is high interest rate, low inflation, like 2% inflation, high interest rate about mortgages like 6 to 7%, 6%. And it's so much better to rent because it's breaking in 15 years. You're better off save the money, the difference to stock market than buying a house. So what I would looking forward to 2026, it's like the Fed chair will be changed. It will change to another one, meaning the Fed chair will be probably more dovish, meaning we'll might see the interest rate getting lower, and then in long run we will see high inflation because there's almost no other way we can get out of the debt. At least I don't see other easy ways to get out of the U.S. debt problem. I can see the easiest way is to have high inflation and then just like let the rest of the world pay our inflation by printing more money. So the higher inflation, as you can recall, higher inflation meaning this, if it's 5%, then it's a fair market right now. Lower interest rate 4.2%. We need to see the mortgage rate 4.2%, or we'll see the price drop to 360K, like 18% drop. Then so either we'll wait 4.2% mortgage, or 360K price, or the inflation 5%. One or either, one of those happen, I think it's the fair market. But as of now, how buying is overrated. You're better off renting, unless you want to stay in the house for over 10 years. And also, it can be a combination of all of those. It's really matter of you can do a calculation. Let me know if you want to have the script. Put it on comment, and if I see enough comments I wanted the script, I will post a GitHub repo on the description. So the take-home message is the house buying is overvalued. If you want to move in 10 years, you're losing money. You're better off renting, putting the difference of home ownership minus the rent to a stock market. You will earn handsomely compared to having to pay mortgage and then let the appreciation of the house do the work, because the appreciation of the house almost never beats stock market. And you want to pay as little down as possible, because the money, as I mentioned on the first point, the money can have a better appreciation somewhere else, like stock market, if you're disciplined enough with your money. And I'm hoping for lower interest rate. If it dropped by 2%, the interest rate drop by 2%, we'll be in the fire market. Even the housing price is the same, because the mortgage will drop by about 30%. 30%, because that's how the math works in terms of mortgage. So 2% drop in interest rate translate 30% drop in mortgage, going from 6 to 4%. So $3,000 mortgage will become $2,000 mortgage. That's how powerful the mortgage interest rate is. And I can see ourselves in the high inflation period in the future to get out of U.S. debt. I don't know when it's going to be, but I think at some point we will. Or maybe there's other methods U.S. can get out of debt. That's beyond me. I'm a physicist, not a mathematician, not a politician. But if you foresee 5% inflation rate in the long term, then the current market is a fire market. Last but not least, for some people, buying a house is not a purely financial decision. It's an emotional decision. They think buying a house will give them happiness, and then they'll give them a perceived stability. Or buying a house, for instance, I wanted to have a land to have animals. Renting a house wouldn't allow us that. Then, if you can financially afford it, and you are okay with missing out on those opportunity costs, namely the down payment can go somewhere in the stock market, or the difference in rent can go to stock market, or or you're okay with staying in the house for over a decade, or you're okay with losing the money financially by buying a house and then moving early, then by all means go for it, because sometimes it's not about code number, but I am here just to tell you the pure quantitatively, like if it's makes sense to buy. The answer is no, unless you want to stay here for over 10 years, or you reach, or in the future hopefully will reach to some of these criteria. The mortgage rate 4.2%, or the price drop of roughly 20%, or the inflation rate you perceive as roughly 5% instead of 3%. And that's my 2 cents on the current housing market, at least in Tennessee. And this actually projects pretty well to the entire U.S. market, and especially in some really overinflated market like Florida. And yeah, did I miss anything on the, yeah, leave me on the comment if I miss anything on home ownership cost and opportunity cost and other things, and let me know. Thanks.